You're listening to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast with Melissa Klug and Jen Obermeyer. Thank you so much for joining in. Our mission is to broaden the horizons of savvy business women in the organizing industry by instilling confidence and inspiring authenticity. You'll gain new insight into strategies designed specifically for professional organizers. So now, let's get started.
We are back on the Pro Organizer Studio podcast, and we are continuing with our series where we interview some of the awesome organizers in our community. And today I am talking to my friend Beth. Beth, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I am so happy to have you with us because I say this all the time. I could talk to organizers all day, every day about like, hey, tell me about your business and tell me about how you started and all that good stuff. But why don't you give us kind of the lay of the land of how you started, how you're in this business, all that good stuff?
I officially started my business on paper anyway at the end of last year. I've been in corporate world for 20 plus years, most recently in marketing, digital marketing, website strategy, things like that. And I just, the last few years had started to realize that I needed to change. I had flirted with the idea of a different company, but I thought, why not change things up? If I'm going to do it, let's do it now, knowing that I wanted to leave the job I was in. And so I actually started researching professional organizing as a business probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe a little more than that, and signed up for the Pro Organizer Studio Inspired Organizer program at least a year and a half ago and started looking into it before I left my job. And my initial thought was I was going to do it as a side hustle while I figured out, do I actually want to do this or not? And then I got to a point in my corporate world job that I just knew it was time. I needed to go. And so I pulled the plug and jumped into it and decided not to really focus on a niche at all yet, because I really wanted to see what was out there and try a bunch of different types of organizing jobs and see what kind of the ones that I enjoyed the most, the ones where I felt like I was making a biggest impact. And so I'm still kind of in that vein of trying all the things and mostly enjoying myself.
Mostly. Okay. So I want to poke on that a little bit. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about the things that you have said yes to and what have you discovered in that journey of what do I like? What do I not like?
The only thing I've said no to thus far was a hoarding job. And it was also right after I started. But I'm fairly certain that's one where I know I'm like beyond my depth for a true hoarding situation. So that's the only no I've had thus far. I've had kind of a range of, I've done a few packs and moves. I've done like a massive decluttering slash pack for a move. And then I've also done kind of the pretty pantries
Mhm.
and some newly renovated homes, like gorgeous, beautiful homes, which I love real estate. So being able to go into some of those fun homes is really cool for me. And I think the decluttering, I find a lot of value. I feel like I'm making the biggest impact for the individual, but I also am recognizing that can't be my only because it emotionally, physically, a lot of times there's emotional challenges for the client. And again, that's where I feel like I'm making a big impact because I'm really helping them on that journey, but it also takes a lot out of me. And so I'm finding that if I can balance those with those sort of like pretty pantry, let's crank this closet out type of thing. That's kind of my sweet spot is finding a balance between those.
I think that's really important because if you did the same, first of all, if you did the same thing every day in any kind of a job, it would get really boring really fast,
Yeah,
right? But
definitely.
especially for those things, and especially if you are one of those people who really take on that emotion of the client, or even if you don't take on the emotion, but you're really affected by this was an emotionally heavy day. It is really nice to break that up with just to like, can you please just decant all my Cheerios?
Yes, exactly.
So I do I want to go back. I want to talk about organizing a second, but I really want to go back to something too. So leaving your corporate job, this is a question that we get a lot. How will I know that I'm ready to make the leap? And so there are a lot of paths. You might do it as a side hustle. You might do it part-time. You might go back to, your day job is 3 days a week and organizing is two, whatever. Can you give people kind of like what your thought process was on I'm just doing it?
Yeah, I rode a lot of waves. I will say, so I could be really zen one day about it. And the next day, like, what did I do? Oh my God, this is insanity. But for the most part, my kind of steady thought through that was I can always change my mind.
Yeah.
I changed my mind about the job I was doing, and I can change my mind about this job. I can decide I don't like it. I can decide I don't like certain aspects of it and farm part of that out. I can decide that I only want to do it part time and I can get another part time job. I don't have to do it the same way consistently. I can learn what I like. I can learn what works. And so I really rode some pretty heavy waves and I still do. They're just maybe not as dramatic as they were at first. But, first of all, organizing is a pretty low barrier to entry.
Very low.
You can
Yes.
take it different ways. Obviously, you can get certifications and things like that. But the upfront cost is pretty minimal at that point. File your LLC, if that. I mean, you can get started without that, I guess, officially, but really doesn't have to cost a lot. And so if I was 2 months in and I decided I wanted to walk away, there's no major harm there, And so I just kept having to coach myself, and I still do. I can change it. I can get a part-time job just to supplement and make that financial leap a little bit more comfortable for me. And so I've been trying to coach myself in that. And actually in all aspects of the business, I can do this for now. My website can look like this for now.
Yes.
My social media can look like this for now. And then I can change it. And I think that's one thing that the Inspired Organizer community has done for me is solidify that feeling for me, because you hear it a lot in that group.
Yeah.
Some people who just went away from organizing altogether and went into some niche running courses or a photography offering or things like that. And so I think that really opened up my eyes to the fact that I can go a lot of different directions.
And that's a really important point, because even if you want to just if you say, I want to be an organizer, period, the end, I love organizing, you can still say yes to, like you said, I also do packing and unpacking, or I'm taking this path and I'm taking this path. Or the great thing is there are other things you can do. You can start an organizing course. We have people who have, like you said, we have someone that started a photography course because she's really into that. We have someone that is a CRM setup expert. She just loves the efficiency aspect of the behind the scenes in the business. There are a lot of different routes you can take, and there you do not have to say, well, I'm only going to do this, but you can also say, yes, I only want to do pantries for the rest of my life. Like, I know someone whose entire business is legitimately just pantries. That's all she does. So it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think you learned from your corporate life? You did a lot of digital stuff, digital strategy. What did you learn that you have been able to bring to your entrepreneurship?
One thing that I realized pretty early on is that, so not even on the business side, but what I was doing, which was digital content planning for websites and strategic planning, a lot of what I did translates really easily into organizing. Did a lot of workflows, did a lot of process setups. I put together project management workflows, and I'm doing that again. They're just right now, it's just managing me, and hopefully maybe down the road more people. But so I think that was really interesting to me. I'm like, once I started taking on a big project, I'm like, this works just like a digital project. I break it down into smaller pieces. I make sure everybody understands their part. So that was eye opening to me. I didn't, coming in, even realize that connection there. The other piece, I think, I do think it was a benefit to me to have some comfort and familiarity with social media and website marketing. I'm not saying my website is the best in the world, but I feel like and in fact, in some ways it might have harmed me, because I probably went in like, oh, I'm going to make this the best website in the world.
You probably overthought it a little
I
bit.
overthought it for sure. I've redone it. I'm not entirely redone it, but I've touched it up a few times. But I think that helped me feel like, okay, well, at least I get this part down. Like, I know I can do this. The other thing that I think it's done is I'm used to asking difficult questions from an analytics and like prove that this works standpoint. And for me, as a new business owner, you get inundated with a lot of pitches from a lot of different areas, whether it's advertising companies that want to sell you on advertising, or even people who want to partner with you. I think it helps me have a critical view of okay, well, tell me your numbers. Like, how many people are actually going to your website, and how many of those people actually go on to do whatever the next thing is? And I've said no to some marketing opportunities because of that,
Yeah.
because I realized that the amount of effort that I was going to put in wasn't going to be worth the return. So I think that helped a lot.
I have what I term a healthy level of cynicism. That's how I look at it. And I think it's important what you just said about asking the questions and asking for some of that data, because I think it's very easy, especially when we're all getting pitched things from the digital world, to just go, it's very easy to reach out to us, right? And try to sell us things, but asking questions. And one example, I'm going to try to be as nice as possible when I say this, but I had someone reach out to my organizing Instagram via DM, which is something that people do as a sales technique. But she was like, I'm an Instagram strategist and I really think that I can make your Instagram a lot better. It was kind of critical. And then I looked and I'm like, she has a third of the number of followers that I do. So someone who has way, way less followers than I do is trying to tell me she's going to give me a strategy that works better. And I'm like, pardon me, but this is maybe not the person that I need to help me. So it's just having that healthy level of questioning, and that questioning, a good person will be able to answer, hey, here are my bona fides and here is what I can give you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
think
The other thing I noticed too is I was able to, because in my old life, I did a lot of different kinds of marketing and I worked on a marketing team. So I saw aspects of marketing that I wasn't even directly responsible for. And especially starting out, and especially right now, it's mostly just me doing all the things. I'm doing the admin, I'm doing the marketing, I'm doing the organizing, I'm doing the networking, which is marketing. I'm doing all those things, and I realized pretty quickly I had to choose what were going to be the biggest impact things
yes,
that I could be doing, whether that's from an administrative or a marketing standpoint,
yes.
and prioritize those things. Because at first I was like, oh, I need to go on the local TV show, which is not like, they're all good things for the most part. But I'm like, I got to go on the local TV show. I need my Instagram, and I need to do reels every other day. And I had all these things. And I was able to kind of like slow my roll a little bit and say, casting a net of like network local TV is probably not a terrible idea. And I have designs to do that at some point. But getting the word out on like Facebook and face to face networking, really, I realized it was going to be a bigger impact than this broad, whomever happens to be watching TV, local TV at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
every day.
Well, and I think that when we first start our businesses, at least this was true for me, is you have these ideas of these like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so important for me to do XYZ. And you actually realize that sometimes those big things, which I got in a couple cases in my business, don't actually convert into clients. Whereas the little tiny things that you think are like nothing are the things that actually make you money, and figuring out what those things are. The other thing is, you totally said it, is you can't do all of the things. You just can't. And so concentrating on the things that are actually like have the data that bring you value and that are doable is so, so, so smart from a strategy standpoint. When you look at your clients, like what has been the biggest thing for you? What has been successful for you?
I've gotten the majority of my clients either through a direct referral. One was an organizer who was retiring, and Facebook. So I guess I should say it wasn't Facebook specifically. It was my friends on
Yeah.
Facebook, and then them getting the word out there. Find my organizer. I've actually gotten a few that way, and then just Google. I would say definitely Google is the biggest one. But probably the last 5 leads I've gotten, I asked how they found me, and they said they were just doing a search because they were in a spot that they needed somebody.
Just remember that Google is your business partner that works 24/7. Your website and Google are your employees that work 24 hours a day.
Yep.
But I also want to go back to something that you said, which I think is super important, is you said friends of mine have referred me, and I never want people to forget, and I will repeat it as many times as it takes, but telling your personal network that you do this business is really important because I have had case after case where my friend hasn't hired me, but they have referred me to their friends. And it's a really important way to go get clients and easy.
Yes. Oh, the other one that I forgot because I almost did it offhandedly and awkwardly. Oh, but that's the like everything's awkward, right? Networking is the worst, but I just have started to try to like pep talk myself. It's gonna suck, and you're gonna go do it, and it's gonna be fine. And it almost always results in at least some connection. But the one that actually turned out to be really great, kind of outside of my primary service area, but there's a interior design and home decor provider a little outside of my area that I love their stuff. Just
Yeah.
love their decor. I love their designs. And I had been following them personally on social media for a while. And when I was still thinking I might do a part time job and this and figure it out, I had reached out to them to see if they needed people. Just like, I'm willing to learn. I want to learn more about interior design because I just like that in general. And I knew it would benefit me in my organizing work. And I had reached out to them initially just for a job, but then also said, I'm starting an organizing business. And they said, well, can you give us your information? And I did. And I've gotten two phenomenal referrals
Interesting.
from them and big clients, beautiful homes. And so that I kind of went to them for a job, but ended up, I
Yeah.
guess I got a job from them, but in a different way.
It was just a different job. A lot of times I hear organizers that are like, oh, I really, really, really want to work with real estate agents. And what I actually think is a better way in, interior designers are a great resource. And I personally would go to an interior designer before I'd go to the real estate route because I do think that interior designers tend to understand what we do and what we can bring to a project.
Yeah. That said, I was just talking with one of the local real estate companies at the end of last week, and they were talking to me about the shift in the market right
Yeah.
now. There was a period of time and still is a little bit, but it's dwindling of where agents didn't have to do a lot of work.
They didn't have to do anything.
No, they didn't have to do anything. They just had to get the listing up there. And that's changing because of the market changes. And so they're really sensitive to the idea that having a home that's ready to show
Yeah.
is a big deal now, is becoming a bigger deal. And so for those organizers who do like to do maybe some simple staging or decluttering, this could be a good time to really tap into that.
That's a really great point is looking at the real estate market and figuring out, like, you're exactly right. At the height of the market, when you could sell a house in 2.5 minutes and people wouldn't even blink and there was no inspection and whatever else, they don't
Right.
maybe don't need your services. Now you have to make the home look a little bit more attractive.
Yeah.
My total side story that no one asked for, my teenage daughter works in a real estate office, and on Sunday, she was at work and she was texting me, and I'm like, "Oh, I see that we're working hard." She's like, "Have you seen the real estate market?" Like, "No, there's nothing to do." She goes, "I have nothing to do today." And I was like, "All right,
Yeah.
really great point." I like,
It's rough right now for sure.
yes, even my teenager knows about the real estate market. So what are kind of your favorite things to do with clients? What are your favorite projects to work on?
I do like kitchens a lot.
Okay.
I love it when I have a client. I say this now, but it does take a lot of time. But I really love it when I have a client who is interested in unique and is really interested in the aesthetic
Okay.
piece, whether that be a pantry, a closet, shelves, because I enjoy that challenge and I like to stretch those muscles a lot.
Okay.
So I will spend maybe a little bit more time researching products for them. I had one who we had a really specific look in mind for this space that was already the decor or the cabinets were redone. And she and I both were on the same page about what would look nice and just could not find it. And I searched high and low and spent more time than I probably should have researching product, but eventually did find it and it looked phenomenal. And I didn't get it at the Container Store. I had to look out into some places that I wouldn't normally look, and that was really fun, and
Yeah.
it looked amazing. I also really I love a good, picking their brains.
Okay.
I really like to ask I like the learning about how they live their lives. Like in another life, I might have been like an anthropologist or I don't really know with. I'm really intrigued by the way people structure their lives and the way they make decisions and things like that. So I really like digging in on how they use their spaces, why they use them that way. Did you ever think about this? I just think the sort of creative problem solving piece of that is really, really fun.
I totally agree with you. And I think one of the most important things an organizer can do is really learn how to ask their clients a lot of questions to get to the root of what is the best organizational solution for you. Because the thing that works with the client on Tuesday is the exact opposite of what might work for the client on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And so having to ask those questions to be like, okay, cool. What happens when you come in? Where does your mail go? Like, how many days a week do you look at your mail? Asking those questions to determine the best system for them is really, really helpful to give them something that they're actually going to keep up with. What is something that is, and I know you said earlier, maybe sometimes the decluttering, like heavy decluttering, but what are some projects that you're like, I could maybe not do this anymore for the rest of my life?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I don't mind doing other people's kitchens and
Okay.
pantries, but I know that it's a really difficult space to maintain
Yes.
and in my own space. So I love to do it for somebody else and I can tell them how to maintain it, but I understand there's very difficult to maintain. And so my own kitchen and pantry, I do not enjoy doing at all, but I love to do them for other people. I don't love paper organizing.
Oh, see, you and I need to team up because I love paper. So I'll do all your paper and you'll do all my client kitchens. This would be
There you
perfect.
go. We'll just do a try. I'm into it. I think, and it's not like I feel like I can do it fine, but I don't understand the need for the paper.
Yeah.
It's one of those where sometimes I have a hard time putting my own personal view out of the like, but why? But why? Why do you need this piece of paper? This
Yes.
makes no sense to me. And so sometimes that's a hard one for me to get over myself.
Yes.
And but like I can set up a system, I can, but I'm always sitting there being like, but I don't, but you don't shouldn't need to do this. But it
I
just
find
makes
myself bargaining with clients sometimes when they're keeping things where I'm like, honey, you don't need this. Like,
sense.
you do not need utility bills from 1973. And but what if I just needed that one? No, but you don't. And so then I'll bargain with them, like, could we agree that we're only going to keep the bills from the last year? And
Yeah.
then sometimes they'll
Yeah.
go with that. So I it's like just negotiating with them on please, please, please say goodbye to these things. So
Yeah. One
on
thing
the
that I noticed I'm learning a lot about is doing better job with upfront questions
okay.
and understanding and I need a lot more practice with this. And this is another area where the community aspect of Inspired Organizer is so important because I feel like I learn a lot of this type of thing from there or can pose this question, which is getting in faster to the nitty-gritty of an individual client, and not necessarily of, like, an individual system, but, like, really understanding them. I've had a couple clients where as I got into working with them more and I realized that you can't screen for everything,
Yeah.
but I realized that they definitely had bigger needs than I realized, and that had I known certain things, I would have come at them from a different way. And the bargaining thing that you just said is what made me think about that because I had a client who and when I say receipts, they had receipts from the 90s.
Mhm.
They had schoolwork from their own childhood and they were in their 70s.
Oh my.
Like a lot of stuff. And I came in with a lot of bargaining and like, let's take 5 of these things. And in reality, once I worked with them for quite a bit longer, I realized we were dealing with maybe something a little bit more intensive
Yeah.
than your standard bargaining wasn't gonna work.
Right.
And I beat my head against that wall a lot longer than I needed to, had I really understood where they were coming from earlier. And those are hard because I feel like I'm probably pretty hard on myself about that learning curve that I have. But yeah, I think the community really helps in that regard of hearing how other people's experiences with that and how do you weed people out or how do you really help understand and get a feel for if somebody is in your wheelhouse,
Yeah.
and your level of ability.
Well, something else that came up in our group the other day, I don't think it was you, it was someone else, but they were talking about how do you tell a client that you're actually not the person for them, that they actually need an interior designer. This particular client, and
Oh, yeah.
after she explained the situation, it was clear this person needed a personal assistant and also an interior designer. She didn't need an organizer. And I actually believe that one of the strongest, most powerful things you can do in your business is say, I'm actually not the person for you versus constantly trying to be the right person.
Yeah.
And I have had to learn that in my own business of I can't be everything to everyone no matter how hard I try. And you could actually do that person a huge favor by saying, I actually think you need a specialist. You know, the description that you just had, that person needs a very specific person and it's not you. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And that also doesn't mean that you're not a good organizer. It means you can't also be like a brain surgeon and you can't be 22 different things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if you could go back to think back to when you were just starting your business, like if you could start over again, what would you tell yourself? Or what would current you tell past you?
I think it's kind of funny. I think current me would tell past me the same things past me told me, but I'd be like, but for real this time.
Yeah,
But
but honestly, no, seriously, listen
but
to me.
seriously, stop spending quite so much time on figuring out your social media or getting your website perfect or whatever it happens to be. That's a hard one because I feel like there's certain things that you just don't believe until you have experienced it.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be perfect. You can change it. You can change your mind. You can pivot. I just changed my pricing. I guess I would call it more my pricing structure. I didn't like vastly change my prices, but the way I explain my pricing, I just changed that. Even though I've been in business less than a year, I think if there were a way I could really convince old me that it's going to be okay and just plow ahead, do it a little faster,
Yeah.
get in there. It's going to be okay. I think the other thing is, and again, this is one where I know this, I've always known this, but it's a thing I continue to struggle with, which is you are going to make mistakes
Yes.
and it's okay. And you're still doing a service for people, even if you're not doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's a really tough one for me, especially going into a new industry. You automatically have a little bit of that, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And then add in where I'm like, "Ah, I can't believe I did that or
Yeah.
said that or whatever it is. And you're going to do it. And you just have to move on.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of concepts wrapped up in that, but also, first of all, you are going to make mistakes. They are really not going to be the end of the world. You're going to feel like they are, but they're absolutely not. You have said it multiple times already, but it's really important. You can change things. You do not, nothing is written in stone. You can change your logo 2 weeks after you do your logo if you want to. It will be okay. But also there's a concept of failing fast, which is do something, put it out there, see how it works, and then say, this works or it doesn't work. And don't commit to something so deeply and never change it if it's not working. It's really something that being flexible, I think, is the best thing about being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I also heard something really great. I actually have a Post-it note on my computer because it said the only people who don't have imposter syndrome are actual imposters. Like
Yes.
con men are the only people that don't have imposter syndrome because they are imposter. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way. And that is genius. We all have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, you're completely delusional. Yeah.
Correct. You have a husband who's also an entrepreneur. So what is it like to live in a two entrepreneur household? Like, do you guys bounce ideas off of each other or how does that work?
Yeah, some. It may be just our dynamic. There are certain things that I'm not going to go to him with. And it's less the fact that I don't think he would know the answer or be able to give some helpful information, but the dynamic is different. And also, and this is purely me, I think because I'm just starting out and I left a job that had a steady paycheck and there's a little bit of guilt there. And there's a part of me that even though I know this is really dumb, it's completely dumb. I don't want to necessarily be that vulnerable in front of him sometimes where I'm like, I don't know what I do. I want him to feel like I'm going to nail this and I don't
Right.
want him to worry because I'm already worrying enough for the both of us, And then also just, how it is. And when you're in a long term relationship with somebody, like it's different coming from that person than it would be coming from somebody else. And so there are certain things I absolutely will talk with them about, but certain things that I'm like, I'm not doing that. We're not going to broach that topic. It's kind of funny. One thing that has actually been beneficial, I have started to do some marketing for him.
Oh, nice.
In fact, I did when he first started, but then I was way too busy with my other job. And I just was like, I'm not, you got to find somebody else to do this. And it languished for a while. And so I've started to do that. And some of the things that I'm putting in place now for my business, I feel like I can now approach him in a different way and say, hey, I'm doing this for my business. What if we
Yeah.
did this for yours? And so that's actually been kind of interesting. I think he's starting to see how I'm setting things up for myself. Whereas if I'm coming from the Fortune 500 company I was at and saying, I think you should do it this way, he's like, you don't understand. This is not that type of business or whatever. And there's still probably a little bit of that. But so that's been interesting. Yeah. I think they're different enough businesses that there's not a ton of overlap. We have shared, it was really nice to already know who to go to for my insurance,
Right.
already know who to go to for our accounting and legal advice. I kind of had that already taken care of. And that was very, very nice.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about, our community is you can go and you don't have to over explain like, okay, so I had this client today. And when I go to a client, blah, 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 like you can cut to the chase of your story and everybody's like, yep, I get it.
Yeah.
Versus sometimes if you go to someone else, like my husband would not be interested in the fact that I had a really hard time finding the exact right size bin for a pantry. Right. But I come to you and you'd be like, dude, I get it. I totally understand. That's a silly example, but so it's nice to have people that understand without you having to explain like your exact industry. But I also like what you said about when you find someone that's in a totally different industry, you might find out like, oh my gosh, that is a really good idea. And like, I've never thought about that for organizing, but how could I adapt that to the organizing world and make that work? So I think it's really smart to have all those people. So where do you see yourself going? What does the next year look like for you?
I think the next year, my thought is really just focusing on growth.
Yeah.
And also I want to explore bringing in additional employees in whatever form that takes. So bringing in an assistant for me, but then potentially testing the waters with having someone and me, but not be me out on the
Yeah.
job. I'm curious about it. It kind of freaks me out. But I also, for one thing, I'm 45, I'm almost 46 years old.
Mhm.
This is a very physical job.
It is.
And I need an end game. I need to know where I'm going to go with that. And ideally, possibly selling the business one day on the road. I reserve the right to change my mind. But the thing being, I need to know where I'm going to go. And I see both growing the clients that I'm taking on, but also possibly growing into other communities or additional teams makes sense to me. And so that's something I want to explore. Definitely some more intensive and extensive network to move me towards that for sure.
I love it.
I also kind of I want to explore some different ways to package my services
Okay.
because I've been seeing some really creative ideas, like a welcome home baby package.
Oh, yeah.
I really love that. I mean, it's still doing what we're doing, but I like the idea of marketing it in a different way or a creative way. And so, really looking into some of those things I think would be really fun.
I was talking to someone today about, I called it organizing adjacent things, where it's organizing ish, right? But it's
Yeah.
still like it allows you to do something different. So, like you said, we have some variety in our work, but it also is still in the category of organizing is making your daily life better. Right. And that there are a lot of parts of that. So it might be a maintenance package. It might be setting up Christmas decorations. Someone was talking about that on our Zoom call earlier today. Like they're going to do Christmas decorating for people. I have done Christmas takedown for people where
Mhm.
I say, like, I'll just come in because who wants to do Christmas takedown? It's the
That's
least
sad.
fun. It's terrible. It's a 0 out of 10 experience. But I come in, I take your stuff down, I organize it really well for the next year. We weed out what you don't need anymore. There are just a lot of things that you can do that fill your cup, do something a little different. It's not the same thing you do every day. And then you might find a whole other avenue that you haven't even thought about.
Yeah, yeah. I think another, just thought about that. I think another thing that I would really like to do is explore more in the realm of interior design. Not
Yeah.
necessarily doing it, but learning more about it.
Yeah.
I just really love it. I like setting up decor in my own house,
Yep.
and I know it would just benefit me in my work. And I think since I do really enjoy those types of jobs with clients who are open to some really unique and beautiful solutions, I think that would be something that I really want to educate myself more on, that both on a personal level and then also for the business side.
The super cool thing is between Instagram, TikTok, all those things, there are so many resources where you can just
Yes.
go gain inspiration, get ideas. It's so cool. I love doing stuff like that. And by the way, this isn't for everyone, but some people are like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare." I've picked paint colors for clients. I picked a floor for a client the other day. She just didn't have time and she's like, "Can you just find something that, the handyman can install?" Yes, I can because I think that sounds fun. It's stuff that I enjoy, and so, yeah, you're gonna pay me to go to Home Depot and pick a floor? Heck yeah, I'll do it. Like,
Yes.
that's why I said, the organizing adjacent, that interior design piece is you are taking so organizing is making something functional, and then the interior design piece is functional can also turn into beautiful and really give you that whole solution. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really just a matter of opening your mind to what the possibilities are, is if I would paraphrase what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, what are you looking forward to as we go into the year? What do you see going on for yourself?
I have a goal to get really wrap my head around being able to speak to my business in detail, like my cost margins
Love
or
it.
profit margins, costs for per job in general. I think that's really important before I do the growth that I want to do so that I can really speak more intelligently about that and make better decisions about what's worth my time and what's not. And thus far, I've kind of been skating, if I'm being totally honest. Obviously I know if I'm making money or not, but I haven't really gotten really precise with that. And so that's a big one for me. And I know that sounds weird to when you ask me what I'm looking forward to. That doesn't sound like that, but I feel it will give me, I think, a sense of confidence moving into the new year where I'm really like, I've got my foundation. I'm ready to grow. I also just am excited about the aspect of the new year.
Yeah.
Hoping I'll be a year in business, but also I think it's such a nice kickstart for organizing and
Yeah.
for me as a business owner as well, as kind of okay, here we go, fresh start. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, and I just think that there are so many opportunities for what we do. And there are so many more people who know, every year that goes by, there are more people that know about professional organizing. And there are less people that we have to explain or less people that you have to hear, you do, wait, what? What do you do
Yeah.
for a job? Like, there's a lot less of that, which is always good. So I feel every year that goes by, it's going to be easier for us to get our names out there and for people to know what we do. Well, we appreciate you spending your time with us today. Like I said, I can listen to people tell their stories all day long. And what I love about this industry is whether you've been doing it for a year or 10 years, there is always wisdom that people have to give. So I really appreciate you spending your time with us today. And I'm excited to see what happens next in your business
Thank
because
you.
I remember when you first decided to join us in our group and in our community, and I just have loved seeing you be able to throw out your success stories, and I can't wait to see what comes next. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Where can people find you on the internet or in the world?
Sure. My website is customorderorganizing.com. And on the socials, I'm at custom order.
All right, we will see you on the interwebs. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening in to the Pro Organizer Studio podcast. If you'd like to get our roadmap for success as a pro organizer, head straight to www.poroadmap.com.